Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Sapienti. I'm the Associate Vice President, Case for Quality for MDIC, and I'd like to welcome you all to our first in a series of webinars on the leadership engagement. And before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about the MDIC and who MDIC is. So MDIC is a public-private partnership, and it was started in 2012 in collaboration with FDA with the sole responsibility or mission of patient benefits and bringing technology and medical device technology to the market faster in a way that's not just accelerated, but also focused on improving patient safety as well as product quality and some of the regulatory processes and procedures and policies that really lend to that regulatory science. We are a membership organization. We have about 64 partners or members in our MDIC family. It's a variety of additional nonprofits as well as industry, government, FDA, CMS, and NIH, as well as those other nonprofits associated with patients, providers, and academia. The basis for MDIC really is to create an environment of collaboration. And you'll see in today's conversation that one of the key areas that came out of the many working groups that we have with MDIC is the leadership engagement, or what was originally called the C-suite engagement program. And we have Pat Schaefer here with us from FTI. Pat is our program manager within the leadership engagement and had really worked with the team to create the leadership engagement playbook. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll engage with the panel. So welcome, Pat. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for arranging and setting up these webinars.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure. I have to say it's been a very deliberate process building this playbook. We started, as you mentioned, with C-suite engagement, and very quickly the team determined, and you can see the team on the slide here. And those people who are in bold are really the authors, the primary contributors to the content in the playbook. But we started with, this vision or this hypothesis that if leadership pushes quality down from the top, if there's a consistent message, then companies will move to a culture of quality, which will in turn bring substantial benefit both to the bottom line and the top line. The approach we took was first to brainstorm all of them up with something like 25 or 30 great ideas. We then had to rationalize them to a vital few. We came up with 10 key practices that we felt could engender this culture of quality. At that point, we sent out a survey to some 80 plus leaders within the medical device industry and established a baseline and found that there are a couple of areas where there could be a lot of improvement, including measuring the value of quality. And also the other area that we found needed a lot of improvement was taking a proactive view of metrics rather than a reactive view, and managing with an eye towards the future. One of the sections was around the culture of quality. That's actually the first chapter in the playbook. And it's interesting because the leaders all felt that they did very well, that they were doing a very effective job of communicating. But the fact that this wasn't universally accepted, and the fact that other areas such as measuring the value of quality weren't really scoring very well, we felt that it's probably worth it to focus our first in the series of webinars on this idea of creating a culture of quality. It's an important first step, and from there, all these other quality initiatives could follow. So the playbook is available. There's link on how to get to the playbook at the end of the presentation today, or end of the discussion. Rather than present the playbook, we decided to have a panel and have a discussion from quality leaders about their approach to developing a culture of quality. So with us today, we have Jackie Kunzler, who holds an MBA and a PhD and is the Chief Quality and Regulatory Officer at Baxter International. In her current role, she has manufacturing, compounding, and R&D responsibilities, including 70 international sites. Thank you, Jackie, for joining us.
Hi.
Lokram Natarajan is Vice President of Quality Assurance and Corporate Sustainability at Stryker. Lokram serves on the GQO leadership team and is responsible for quality assurance activities across the supply network in areas of incoming inspection all the way through to final inspection and sterile lot release. Prior to that, Lokram worked in the automotive industry for 10 years. Francisco Vicente is the program manager for the case for quality within the FDA's CDRH, Office of Product Evaluation and Quality. The case for quality is an ongoing strategic priority for CDRH. The mission is to improve access and outcomes for patients and improve device quality by engaging industry, payers, providers, and patients to focus on the quality and performance of medical devices. And finally, Joe Sapiente is Associate Vice President of Case for Quality at MDIC. But we're going to be speaking with him not in that role, but the fact that he joins MDIC with over 38 years of experience in the medical device industry, in quality and regulatory compliance, product registration, continuous improvement, and new product development and innovation. So again, panel, thank you so much for joining us today. What I'm going to do is start off with a question. Jackie, let's start with you. And I'm going to ask you, how do you define a culture of quality?
Okay, thanks, Pat. So for me, a culture of quality is a culture that, number one, goes well beyond compliance. Sometimes in the past, people have confused compliance and quality, but they're actually separate things. In our case, in a healthcare company, a culture of quality always has the customer, or in our case, the patient, in mind. And it's thinking about the way that we do things up front rather than measuring after the fact how things went. And so it's really all about proactive commitment to doing the right thing and sometimes changing what you're doing so that you are producing a product that is what it should be.
Great, thank you. Lokram, do you share that view, or do you have a different sense? How do you define culture of quality?
Thank you, Pat. Wonderful kickoff for this session, and thank you for this invitation and the dialogue. And as Jackie said the right thing, it's doing what is right, and doing what is right and not measuring after the fact. So let me build on a little bit more on how we think about building the culture of quality, or what is a culture of quality. I would put it in three components. Number one is systems, the systems that we use on an everyday basis for us to run efficiently our operations. You can consider that to be a PLM, or it can be an ERP system, or it can be a CAPA or NC system and whatnot. The second most important one is the processes, the procedures, policies, process that we use and use on an everyday basis that govern our operations. The third one that I would say is most important and probably more important than the other two is the people, the talent. It's the behaviors that we instill in each one of us. While we have the efficient system, scalable system, repeatable system that we have within our companies, whether it's QMS or IS systems, it's people who make the difference. And we do need to pay more attention to the behavior that we instill, expectation that we place on them. So collectively, when all of these three components work together as one, I believe we demonstrate a culture of quality. We can instill a culture of quality in a company. we can also promote that so the customers see the culture of quality in the products and the services that they come to receive from us.
Great, thank you. Joe, let me ask you a slightly different version of the same question. How do you know that you've actually achieved a culture of quality? How do you know that it's actually working?
That's a great question. There's a couple of ways, I think, because when you look at, or when you listen to the different definitions but the similarities within those definitions, you could look at correlation to metrics. You could look at correlation to certain KPIs and fewer issues in your manufacturing operation, higher quality, higher customer satisfaction. But it's really in the behaviors that Lokram and Jackie have talked about. It's how is the organization demonstrating the key behaviors that really demonstrate the commitment to a quality culture. And when you think about culture, it's that alignment. So what are we aligned to in what we do? I think we're all aligned to putting the patient first. Everything we do has the patient in mind. And when you see companies develop cultures of quality, they have the talented people, they have the processes in place, we're executing. But when you make that connection to that patient, it unlocks the value. It really empowers people to then really manifest those behaviors and really demonstrate those behaviors in a way that is tangible and it's measurable in many cases. When you think about being able to assess the culture, you're looking at the people, you're looking at the process, and then you're looking at your results.
Great, thank you. Cisco, same question, but again, slightly different twist on it. You've had an opportunity to work with dozens, if not hundreds, of device manufacturers, all demonstrating different levels of culture of quality. Can you talk about the spectrum and where you see the industry going?
Yeah, so the spectrum actually, that's varied, right? And this is just across the different companies who engage and we've talked to and who are all specifically driving, I think, what they believe is the best. But we've seen organizations where it's very clear that, one voice dominates. It's, what the boss says, what they command, everybody kind of does. There is kind of a bit more of a fear that's instilled in the organization, and it's something that's detectable. You see it in their decision making, you see it in the way they engage. So you've got that end of the spectrum, and then you've got organizations that they're running smoothly. Everybody is attuned to where they need to go. We talk about the culture being established, but I think it's been reflected and echoed multiple times here that it's in the behaviors. People have this constancy in their purpose, why they're doing things, what's driving and moving forward. And we've seen that extreme on the other end too, right? Again, no one is saying that that's perfection, but they understand that, and they keep trying to drive further into the into how they achieve a better outcome and results. There's also a feeling of everybody thinking in terms of what's in the best interest of the customer, and an understanding that goes not just for the end user, the recipient of the product, but even in their processes, right? What's going to be what I deliver to the next stage of production or the next stage of the process activities. It's really a very dynamic scale that we're dealing with when we're talking about the medical device industry on our side. It's anywhere from 18,000 to about 22,000 companies, and all very different capabilities and maturity. So we've seen all the extremes.
So Lokram, I'm going to ask you about the benefits of a culture. We've talked a little bit about observing it in terms of behaviors and defining what it is, but Why do it? Why invest in it? What is the level of investment, and what is the return on that investment, would you say?
There are a lot of different dimensions on the benefits of a culture of quality. I would say first and foremost, we can think about qualitatively the brand that we can project to our customers. So Jackie talked about before when we were preparing and setup, and her daughter just gave birth to a child, and in a surgery center, seeing that in a Stryker product makes her feel secure. Hopefully trust and the confidence. These are all qualitative examples one gives when they see the Stryker brand. I'm sure that goes for many of the companies that Cisco and Jackie and Joe has seen or worked for. And that's what we want to instill when we say culture of quality, is that trust and the confidence. It's a qualitative measure. The next one that I would see is qualitative measures or quantitative within the company. So if you measure the quantitative results, such as the KPIs that we have in quality, we see tremendous benefits. Cost of poor quality in companies run into millions of dollars. And if you do the right thing, those can be managed in a much better way, so we can propel the business instead of wasting money in chasing the errors or the I would say NCs and recalls and all the ramifications that come from a poor quality. So we have seen tremendous benefits in instilling quality and seeing in the qualitative measure and quantitative measure. And I can give you some examples on the quantitative side. We have reduced our non-conformances that customers see as a product that doesn't meet specification by over 50% in the last 2 years. That's a remarkable progress, I must say. And in this year, we are comparing a benchmark to the last year, which is a tough year to compare to because we were all shut down. We have reduced it by another 14% year to date. So we continue to raise the benchmark. We continue to relentlessly pursue this continuous improvement towards that perfection that Cisco talked about. We may never achieve the perfection, but we want to be in pursuit of the perfection. Progress is much better. So we take a lot of pride in driving that continuous improvement within the company.
Great, thank you.
I'll just add a few things to that.
Please.
If you don't mind. One of the things we've seen in the transformation we've been through over the last several years is people no longer have to be told what the right thing to do is. People are doing it on their own, from the bottom all the way to the top. And that came around by leadership setting an example initially years ago. And it has trickled down. And now, where you used to have so much need to be involved as a leader in every decision, in every recall, in anything that was going on, now people take it upon themselves to do the right thing, and they really understand it, they live it, they breathe it, and that connection again between our day-to-day operations team and the patient is so strong that, and they realize that at the end of the day, it could be your husband, your brother, your sister, your child who's on the receiving end of a product, and you want that to be perfect, and you would always want that to be perfect. So I think that's one of the key changes I've seen, is the team really understands what the right thing to do is and does it without being told to do it.
I mean, very interesting that you have such alignment, Jackie. What is that translated into? I mean, is there a financial benefit, or is it a throughput benefit? How do you measure success by focusing on culture?
I'm sure there is a financial benefit, because if you've ever been through the exercise of trying to quantitate financially what the cost of poor quality is, it's exorbitant. I mean, every complaint has a cost. Every recall has a cost. Every warning letter has a cost. 483s have cost. So certainly, as you improve your culture and you think from the front end first, rather than measuring after the fact, you produce better products and your end result is just better. And so, yes, there's going to be a financial benefit there, of course. But more than that, as Lockram indicated, your brand is your brand. It's important. And what people think when they see Baxter or Stryker or any other company, you want that to be, wow, I love those products. Those are good. Put me on those. And to what Lockram was saying a minute ago, my daughter had a baby Thursday, and I saw the IV bags hanging, and I said, whose IV bag is that? And she said, it's Baxter. And I said, yay, yay, I'm happy to have my daughter on the product that we're making. So, at the end of the day, that's what's important.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
And Pat, I'd just like to maybe add a little bit to Jackie's comments on that pride and that, seeing your brand, that's an enterprise-wide culture, and that's not easy to accomplish quickly, right? So I think we've all had experiences where you develop that accountability and responsibility at the levels where the folks that are touching the products are closest to the products really are driving that culture. But to engage with a company and then, want to re-engage with that company, whether you call it a net promoter score or a favorable experience, that's an embedded culture across the entire enterprise. That's not just those people that engage with the quality organization or the development teams or manufacturing or supply chain. It's the entire experience. So it becomes, that return on investment becomes probably something that you can't measure because it's embedded in your entire enterprise. And there are efficiencies, there are reputation, there's drawing, like I said, the net promoter scores, and customers are willing to, endorse you or recommend you to others. I mean, those things, they are measurable, but how much of that really was driven by culture of quality? It's hard to say, but you got to believe that it has a lot to do with it, because it's those behaviors. It goes back to the behaviors. So from a customer perspective, what's it like to engage with someone from Baxter or someone from Stryker, whether you're a salesperson or, accounts payable person or human resources? It's that enterprise. It's that experience.
Yeah, I completely concur with Joe's point about that experience, the full total experience when they come across a brand. When we look at salespeople interacting with the customer, how do they interact? What do they say? How do they service the product? How do we react to situations as well is equally important, as we've all seen it. It's not like every product that we ship will be perfect, but how do you deal with something when it's not perfect? It's not like we don't have recalls. Do we do the right thing when there is a harm, there is something that potentially could hurt a customer, whether it's a total customer experience or it could be a risk to a patient or a consumer? So that also adds to the brand statement is how do you stand behind your product, and do you do the right thing always? And it's really critical for us to continue to sustain that brand statement and provide that sense of confidence and trust. So I would say there's a lot that rides in it. And some people, as Joe said, most of them think, quality is attached to something that you do every single day on a product basis or a service basis. But actually, it starts with somebody taking an order. Somebody just picking up a phone and saying, yes, I'm putting your order into the system. And if they do it the right way, the product flows through the whole system and the customer receives what they ordered. So every aspect of a customer interaction has to be in a sense of quality. So that's what we want to instill within the organization, not just the products that we make and the customer is going to touch. It's a total experience.
That brings up a broader question. We've been talking about the benefits that each of you has perceived in your companies by instilling a culture of quality, but obviously you're not necessarily the last people who touch your products. There are physicians, there are distributors, there are service organizations. I'd love to get each of your thoughts on how you extend that culture of quality beyond the four walls of the company to your distributor networks, to your service networks, to the call centers. Maybe, Jackie, we could start with you.
Sure. So, number one, we do training with all of those partners that we have. We also, if you think about suppliers, we build in certain expectations into our contracting so that our suppliers take on the same values that we have. We certainly, our distributors, and some of our distributors are internal, our own distribution centers, and others are external. We roll out the eye care program, which I'll talk about later. But that's our program for making sure that everybody is linked closely to the end user of the product. And so, we're in constant contact. We're in constant training where we communicate our expectations. And if somebody's not meeting the standard that we have, then we make a change. And sometimes, unfortunately, whether it's leadership or it's employees or it's suppliers or distributors, sometimes you do have to make a change. And so being cognizant of that and taking action when you see a trend that's not going in the right direction is critically important.
Great, thank you. Joe?
I have to agree with Jackie. I think it's really important because I think, in the early comments, culture will draw in talent, right? So you want to bring in the right talent, and then you want to demonstrate those right behaviors internally. But it's being able to partner with folks that are, that share the values that you share, and being able to partner with them, especially on the supply base, being able to partner with those suppliers, because we all have experience where you have a very large supply base, but you do have those strategic partners that you want to engage with. And it's really important, I think, to have those relationships built on common beliefs and alignment around that quality culture, or that culture of quality. And so I think that's spot on. When you talk about distributors and dealers and other things like that, that's still another important factor, is because they're an extension of your company. And so, you really want to try to partner with folks, again, that are aligned with that have the same shared beliefs and behaviors that you do. It's not always easy, but it's something that, will, as your culture of quality matures within your organization, so will your culture of quality with your relationships will also mature. But I think the proof is really, how do we demonstrate it as a success, and why is it important? And I think this comes up with suppliers, and it probably comes up with the distributors. What's in it for me? Why do I need to, align with the beliefs that you have? What's it going to cost me? I think we heard that in suppliers. And at the end of the day, it's not just going to improve the relationship they have with us as a company, but they have other companies that will certainly, benefit from working with an organization that has those common beliefs. Because reality is, and I think Cisco mentioned it, reality is we're trying to get everyone to embrace a culture of quality, regardless of the size of your organization. So, and we know various companies work with the same suppliers. So it's sort of that the rising tide floats all boats. It's just the right thing to do. And so when you're talking about distributors and others that on the commercialization side of medical devices, they will benefit as well. And that will be, again, their reputation and their brand improves when they're demonstrating behaviors that we all share.
Thank you. Lokram, any thoughts in terms of how you extend that culture of quality across your network and ecosystem?
Yeah, a lot of what Jackie and Joe talked about, I can concur with, and I actually applaud the same things that most of us, if not, at least attempt to do it. It's going to be a challenging thing to do, is what I would say, because what you can control is within the four walls of your company is one thing. You can instill the culture and whatnot. When we extend that over to the distributors, and not only in our country, but in other countries outside of mature and advanced countries, it becomes a lot more gray, if you ask me. So it's a challenging environment to go tackle, but we can do it. It depends on the choices a company makes, how committed it is to the mission and the values of the company, and what decisions is a company willing to make at those critical junctures when you have to decide, do I grow into those regions and with these distributors and with these suppliers, or do I put quality first? Because long-term, what customer needs and our brand is more important than a short-term goal, which is to improve our growth and sales and et cetera, profits and et cetera. So it's a choice, it's a commitment. That's what most of these all of our companies will be challenged with. I don't think it's one static element of let's train and let's focus on these standardized processes and we will be much better off. No, it's actually a reinforcement on a routine basis, and it's a decision that we need to make on an everyday basis to do what is right, and demonstrate that to the future employees and commit it to all the customers. So I would say it's a challenging task to do. It can be done. Successful companies, great companies have demonstrated over and over, and they've benefited, as Joe said, not only themselves, but also the partners have benefited too. But you have to be in this for the long haul.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to build on Okram's comment in terms of international. And you heard in the introductions, Jackie has 70 sites worldwide. And when you talk about Baxter or you talk about Stryker, whether you're in the US or you're in an international country, the culture is the same. You feel the same commitment to a culture of quality. It's consistent regardless of where you are. So if you're in China or Japan or Korea and you're in a Baxter facility or a Stryker facility, you feel as though you're in the same quality culture. So as you start to work with international distributors, they're not going to feel different by an engagement with Stryker US or Stryker Canada or Stryker China. And that's the important thing from an organizational perspective, is that consistency within your your four walls. But when you walk in, you feel like you're at the same facility you were in a few weeks ago in a totally different location, because it's tangible. You can feel it. That culture just resonates.
Correct. Yeah.
That's great.
Actually, if I could add something to, because I think it's the exact same experience that we're dealing with right now, even with our case for quality efforts, right? It's the idea that we know collectively we're in this together. It's better for us to partner and everyone succeed versus, everybody compete and not collaborate. But, even along this journey, oftentimes we're learning as we're going through the process and going through these stages ourselves. And, now that at least I've got a chance and I've got a captive audience of quality leaders, maybe I can ask how that experience has been for you guys yourselves, right? Because it is not only the idea of it, being a challenge to manage, again, the behavior, the cultures, get everybody aligned on the purpose there. But the question that comes up oftentimes, and we're talking about it here with this being a leadership engagement playbook, is this something that you think needs to start very much from the top? We know the importance of it, but in your experiences, has it been successful within the midst of the organization and it kind of propagating out from there? Bringing in all that engagement, building out and bringing that same value and constancy to not just, up to the leadership chain, but then to the external partners or collaborators that you deal with.
So Cisco, let me see if I can answer that. When we did Case for Quality, or the culture initiative, Quality Begins With Me at Covidian, it started with a message from the top down. And it resonated from the leadership, from our leadership team. We drafted the strategy, we implemented the strategy, and we rolled it out. And we rolled it out to those frontline employees, creating, examples of what did it look like to demonstrate the proper behaviors. But it also empowered them. to be able to see something and say something and stop the line if there's something wasn't correct. And so we had buy-in and support from the top leadership because they were speaking the language, they were walking the talk. We had frontline employees who were empowered now because, hey, the CEO told us it's okay to do this. Where the challenge became, and we talked about it earlier, the challenge became that middle manager, because they were being told by their leadership, hey, you've got numbers to produce. You can't shut the line down. You've got to figure out a way to keep running. And so the value was in sort of educating that group on it was okay to do the things that we're talking about here, and on empowering the frontline employees to, to build those quality circles and to try to solve issues on the floor, but being empowered to stop the line. And because it was the right thing, we didn't want escapes, we didn't want quality issues, we wanted to reduce those issues from occurring. And once that middle manager became comfortable with the ability to either go up and say, hey, I shut it down, or go down and say, yeah, let's work on these quality issues, that then I think took a lot of pressure off of the infrastructure to sort of embrace that culture. And that it only came from in making sure that the leadership was demonstrating the right behavior, saying the right things, and then allowing the middle managers to make those empowered decisions that Jackie talked about, pushing decisions down and sort of creating that ability to be accountable and responsible at those levels.
At the end of the day, by not stopping the line, you're not saving yourself anything. And the notion that you are is a fallacy, because if it gets out of your control and you end up distributing something that's not right, the cost of doing that is so much higher than the cost of just stopping the line. And one of the things we have a lot of discussion about at Baxter is with my boss, who's the CEO, what things should you set targets for and what should you not? And as an example, one of the ones we discuss a lot is recalls. If you say you can have no more than, 10 recalls a year, I'm making numbers up here, but when you get to number 9, all of a sudden there's this unwillingness to get to number 10. And so those are behaviors we don't want to drive. And so there is an art of sorts to figuring out what metrics you should be monitoring and setting limits for, and how you set them, and what the tone at the top says about them. And that's a little bit of a tricky thing, especially if it's tied to compensation. You have to be really careful. But I agree wholeheartedly with what Joe said, that it has to come from the top. If the top doesn't buy into it, nobody's going to buy into it, and it won't trickle down. And that from my standpoint is disaster. I've seen it before and it doesn't work. So I'm a huge advocate that it has to start from the top.
Great.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more as well, Pat, if you like. So
Please.
This is an important topic, right? So incentives drive behavior. That's what Jackie said, which is so true, right? So we want to incentivize in the right areas so we get the right behavior, so we can instill the right culture of quality. We don't want to take metrics like recalls and other metrics equally similar to financials. That's what, once you put a metric like financials and recalls side by side, people are driven to deliver it. Every one of our employees, doesn't matter, Baxter, Stryker, Covidian, 99% of the folks who come into work want to do the right thing. They want to do what is expected of them. So what we have done in Stryker is, and we have asked this every year, and we're going to ask that again this year, there is a survey that goes on. It's called Q12. There is 12 questions are being asked of every single employee, right from the CEO up to the salesperson, service person, etc. 25,000 people take it. We do it every year, and then we look at the results. One of the key questions out of the 12 is, do you believe we are doing the right thing in quality? Does your associates, your functional partners do what is the right thing for quality? These are important questions. Second question we ask is, do you have the tools and equipment to do your job right? So there are a number of questions, and these are key questions to ask. So we empower the team to do what is right in the first place by tooling them up, we're empowering them, and also asking the critical question about quality. That's one aspect. Second, quality is embedded in the mission statement for us. It's not in the quality policy only, where we show it to the notified bodies and external bodies, and we come in saying, okay, we have a quality policy that meets in regulatory environment and whatnot. No, actually, it's embedded within the mission. Top tier quality products is in our mission. So we won't deliver a product which is not meeting the expectations on the quality level. So that's a commitment, that's in the mission. So how we grow, how we deliver has to be embedded right from the mission. And the mission is spoken in every meeting, every town hall. Then the last piece I will say is recognition. So incentives is one thing, but recognition has to come on a day-to-day basis when people are doing great things, and also showcase that when somebody's failing, then make sure that is also being held accountable. So accountability is a key values within our company. And if we don't demonstrate people are held accountable and we do what is right, then it's going to slip into the culture is eroding over time. So building culture of quality is one, but maintaining is equally important. And that happens with a lot of reinforcement and recognition and accountability.
Great. Thank you all for those insights. We've talked a little bit about the value, the benefit to the company in terms of a culture of quality. We've talked a little bit about how to tell if we have one. Cisco, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the impact down outside of the company. During a couple of years ago, we were working on the value of quality, and we found that the cost of poor quality or the value of good quality goes beyond the company or even the distribution network to the providers and even to the FDA and probably other health authorities as well. I wonder if you could talk about that broader benefit that a culture of quality within the manufacturing organization brings to that broader ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think that there's a myriad of different examples. Part of what even we as an agency struggle with is getting to some of the information we need to get the better, the better correlation with some of what we're looking for in our work. But just to highlight the idea of what that kind of culture activity enables, things that we've seen, again, when it's bought in, when you've got all that kind of living through the system, people start thinking in the organizations and the companies a lot more creatively around how do they deliver a better outcome, better result. We've had, for example, recently a lot of impact at various companies because of the pandemic down to their suppliers. But we've seen some of the companies who've been engaged in, even some of the behaviors we discussed here, bringing in that culture that they've established at their organizations down to their suppliers. And they've been able to demonstrate and weather, the impact of this pandemic with no disruption in their product availability and their supply. It's things like that. The idea that when everybody is driving and motivated and empowered to not only stop the line, it's encouraged, it's that problem-solving mindset, leadership is supportive of it. People work to drive and find the problems earlier, faster, before they become something that's significant in the activities. But from an agency standpoint, we talk about the idea of preventing things going out. This is a lot of what drove our work right now with the Make Kappa Cool pilot. We see those behaviors happening. We see that starting to go on. And then we see where things start to either hit a barrier with regards to the way regulations are perceived, applied, or considered. And that's where I think we can help to move and shift those barriers, because the organizations are demonstrating where their needs are. And I think that has been the most impactful for us as an agency as we've been learning through this process. And it really does help shift our dynamic, but the value is there. It's just a question of always going back and figuring out what the direct measure is that will demonstrate that activity in a quantitative manner. But we've got a lot of qualitative examples. I just wish we could find a way to get to that better measure to put out there for people to really see and be able to, kind of absorb for themselves and take back to their leadership on their end.
A follow-on question for you, Cisco, is, I think that FDA, CDRH has certainly seen a return on investment in terms of the VIP program. And in a sense, the maturity model, to some degree, measures culture of quality. Has that benefited you? Has it benefited companies? Is that a tangible example of the benefit of the value of culture?
It's, to me, at least, if looked at it in the right light, and I think this is always why I want to be cautious, that idea of putting that measure around culture. There are things that help that are good indicators one way or the other, but we started very early on in Case for Quality and thinking through about measuring that idea of culture, and it's so varied and so specific to the organization that it's a challenge. But what we do see within the appraisal methodology and what we're getting an output from the Cmmi model are indicators, right, that do correlate to changes in the culture. You see certain ones that I know are part of our basic we always keep, right? The idea of the 3 practices around governance, implementation, managing by performance. Those are very easy to correlate to cultural improvements, right? You see the improvements there. Leadership paying more attention, more investment in the support systems for their staff. You see them thinking through and coming up with better data, better analytics, and better performance measures. That is all reflective of people kind of buying in, starting to feed into the system, trusting the organization's leadership and the intent more. Is it directly reflective of all the cultural elements? Not necessarily, but it does provide us some insight that things are moving and progressing in the right direction. But I think more importantly, what it does do is tell the organization, here's what I need to focus on and change. And then we can take that information and what we're seeing and where we're seeing collective gaps across the whole industry and say, okay, there's a bigger issue here that we're seeing everyone have a problem with. That isn't necessarily cultural, that's systemic. We can drive a change in that improvement, because a change in that behavior, because it's something that's probably being caused by an interpretation to, or an action to, a reaction to what we're doing. I think focus of taking some of these things and applying them across other companies, we've not looked at trying to do that yet, but we've seen organizations do that within their own system, leverage their results and comparatively use them to drive improvements across multiple sites or different parts of their organization because they know their culture and it's more meaningful to them. I think we get that nice, progression, that indicator, it says it's moving, but we don't necessarily need to be in the full set of weeds of what it takes to drive all the different cultural aspects of the organization.
Great.
Touching on real briefly on the Cmmi model, I found that very, very useful because we had a continuum of scores across our sites, and we had numerous sites enrolled to be evaluated through that model. And there was definitely a correlation between the overall site performance and the maturity model. And while it's not perfect, it definitely was an indicator for us of some sort of accuracy within that model. So I really appreciated that. And then one other thing I was going to say on Make Kappa Cool, if I went back years ago, several years ago, and you looked at our kappas and you looked at the CA, corrective actions, versus the PA, preventative actions, you would have found, and I'm making numbers up again, but, 2,000 CAs and 0 PAs. And one of the metrics that we've really worked hard to change is setting goals for PAs so that we're moving upstream rather than just waiting for, semi-catastrophe. So I love all these initiatives. They're all great and they serve an absolutely relevant purpose.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. So we've talked a lot about, the value of having a culture of quality, what it looks like. Love to turn our discussion over to how do you get there? And I'd love each of you to share some insights in terms of either the major strategic initiatives or the small tactical tools that you use in order to build and sustain and align your company on a culture of quality.
This is my opportunity to take notes.
I was going to say, Lokram, do you want to take the first stab at that?
Sure, Pat. I will go back 10, 12 years backwards into the historical perspective to share with you where we started. What you see today in Stryker is not happenstance. It was hard work, and that started about 12 years ago, and that is a recipient action of 3 warning letters. So we did get woken up from warning letters from different divisions. And that is the impetus to say, this is not acceptable. This is not who we are. This is not who we should be. And there is a whole bunch of folks that came together as one team across the various divisions. We are decentralized at that time. We didn't have my role to begin with to look at quality across Stryker. We didn't have many other roles that are here today from corporate standpoint to operations that we centralized before. It is like 9 separate operations, 47 different sites, each one of them operating in a separate arena, separate structure, culture, etc. Although we were all rallying towards one brand, the brand wasn't unified by the actions, right? So that was the initiation of our journey, what we call as Quality System Improvement Plan. We call it QSIP, similar to QSIT, QSIP. And thousands of people were poured into it. The commitment was so strong to get back into the trust and the confidence that we have with the customers and also with the agency like FDA. And the company committed to millions of dollars in remediation activities. And as many of the speakers said before, we were willing to stop the line and put it on hold. Actually, we were willing to stop new product innovation. Innovation stopped in one of the divisions completely. It came to a grinding halt where I had that warning letter. And all of those folks that are doing innovation, and from R&D to manufacturing, procurement folks and quality folks, were all devoted to remediation. In the remediation process, we found what was broken. There is all these different ways of doing things, but not a consistent way of doing things. That's number one. So there is a lot of effort put into standardization and as well as harmonization across the company. Hence the birth of a corporate quality manual. At the time, we didn't have one. Now we have one. There's a lot of policies and procedures in the corporate now which govern what we do across Stryker. It doesn't matter how many companies we buy. Everybody is going back to that frame of reference, right? That we all have to follow. The second piece is experience and talent. We believe in talent a lot in Stryker, but we also wanted to hire the experienced people who can help us, right? So that was a big change as well. So we hired a whole bunch of folks that are experienced in this, whether it's in different industries or medical devices. And then we also had external help to come and educate us. What is the frame of reference? What is the right thing to do? And how do we process based on risk? And how do we standardize that risk mentality and risk thought process across the company? So a lot of efforts went into in the last 10, 12 years. And there was also specialization happened. Supplier quality was not an entity in certain parts of the divisions. And now there is a global supplier quality team, which is fantastic, that we see all suppliers with one unified approach. We have a quality organization for operations that looked at everything in operations in one unified voice. We do specialize in R&D in the products we deliver, but we are all governed by the same design controls now, the same outcome. the advanced operations team is looking at all products in the same lens in what it takes to go from a concept into production to product realization, right? Along the way, there are several decisions we need to make. And we've created a balanced scorecard. And the balanced scorecard is not just about time to market or the dollars that we are going to get after we launch the product, but it's got quality elements built in it. And also we have a fantastic post-market surveillance right now with KPIs that are standardized. And I get this every month, 6th day of the month. I get across the whole Stryker network, all metrics rolled up, and I can go to the divisions if I want, or I can go to a site, I can go to a supplier. So we know that metric, and we are relentless at looking at them and improving them. So the culture of improvement, continuous improvement, is another biggest element of us building through this culture, right, over time. Then the last piece is recognition that we instilled about 7-8 years ago as we were building this up. And quality award is given at the highest level. Every year it is given for customer experience, quality, and also as innovation, but it's equally with all the other categories. Quality is also equally there as an award category, and people do get recognized for doing fantastic work. And that's not the only award. We recognize people on an ongoing basis every single day for raising their hand, stopping something, or finding something before it gets to a customer hands, or root cause problem solving, as Jackie said, preventing issues. Just this morning, Jackie, I was in a CAPA review board and across one of our divisions in joint replacement. And the very question I asked, how many P3 CAPAs have you opened in this division? So that spurred a whole bunch of conversations. What we call P3 is preventive CAPAs. We have created a category for it, and we'll measure that and we'll instill and drive that culture, right? So there are a lot of ways, and hopefully that's helpful, what I shared.
The Locrum, not that it's a competition, but I'll see your 3 warning letters and raise you 3 warning letters. So we've been down the same road, and actually we called our program QSIP as well, Quality System Improvement Plan and Remediation. And everything you said is very similar to the road we went down 6 years ago. A couple of things I would add. We brought in leadership for quality and compliance that was outside of quality. So senior leadership came in from other functions, R&D, in some cases, even the business sector. And the benefit of doing that was people came in with just fresh eyes and no biases toward anything. And that was extremely pivotal, including myself. I came from R&D. And after coming into quality, I spent a lot of time evaluating our senior leadership. And I found that there were some people who very much could embrace culture change, and there were other people who just were never going to get on board. And so, unfortunately, I had to make some pretty tough decisions about, who was on the train and who was not going to be on the train moving forward. And that was important. And then another item around personnel, I would say, is we had a lot of people who landed in quality. I always say just kind of by accident. They really didn't. They were history majors, let's say, and they couldn't find a job, and so throw them in quality; they'll be fine there. We put a lot of effort into recruiting engineers and scientists who really understood the way the products worked, could make decisions that were based on technology and more scientifically deep, I would say. And that was very important as well. So in addition to revamping the quality system and making a harmonized quality system across the company, leading by example as leaders, changing out personnel, and then probably as important or most important, at that time, we had a really brutal relationship with the FDA and other regulators. And sorry, Cisco, but for some reason, the leadership at the time had made this assumption that, the company's always right. And, this constant battle at every inspection and every finding. And we turned that upside down and said, look, the agencies are here for public health. They're here to protect public health. Their intent is good. It's the same intent that we have. And so rather than constantly trying to put together some argument for why one is right and the other's wrong, why don't we get on the same side of the highway and decide to work together and embrace the fact that all of what we're doing is for the benefit of the patient and the public health. So that switch in thinking became a huge pivot point for us and has continued to be.
Great.
I
Joe,
think
your
we
thoughts?
share that sentiment internally too.
So Locrum and Jackie, you touched on all of the reasons 11 years ago when I was with Covidian, we started the Quality Begins With Me program. It was because we just weren't satisfied with our outcomes. We had inspectional results we weren't satisfied with. We had recalls that we weren't satisfied with. We had, internal KPIs, whether they were DPMs, CPMs, NCRs. They were all things that we knew we could do better. And that's where the leadership came and said, listen, you've got a couple of weeks to get this strategy in place. And it was all about execution. But it was also about, and you guys mentioned this too, is it's about leveraging some of the programs we already had. We had a recognition program, but did it have an element of rewarding folks for, quality behaviors? And how do you build on that? And I think that speaks to Cisco, to the VIP program. So the appraisals look at areas within the organization that you don't have to have a formal quality improvement program in place, but are you leveraging recognition? Are you rewarding folks for demonstrating behaviors? And so that in itself, I think, is a major step in the right direction. But I think very similar to the other two members of the industry, we all had issues that we were just not happy with, and it was a call to action. Whether it's a 483 or a warning letter, and you do a Tiger team and you do SWAT teams and you airdrop somebody into a facility to work on remediation. That's essentially what the Quality Begins With Me program was all about, was a call to action about culture. It was a call to action about improving the mindset and the behaviors. And if it needed to be, switching out of talent, then those decisions were made as well. But it's a long journey, I think, is what you're hearing. But you got to start, and these incremental wins are the things that create that momentum to keep going. And I think that's what the journey that you're hearing that a lot of companies are on is. They're all committed to continuously improving, and they're not stopping. We don't want any backsliding. We all know we're not perfect, but the idea is to continue to move forward. And that I think. But it all starts with a bad experience or an unfortunate conversation with your CEO about a warning letter that you really are not happy. You're not proud of that, and no one's ever proud of that. So,
I love your answer, Joe. If I can add a couple of comments here on piggybacking from Jackie. And Jackie, I'm so glad you said what you said about having different backgrounds come and work in quality, especially someone from R&D, like such as yourself. That is wonderful. I didn't come into this. I was coming in from automotive. I was in a career quality professional, and I brought a completely different dimension when I came in. I didn't know there is industry like medical when I came in, but I'm so happy that I'm in medical devices because there is so much opportunity to take it to the next level. One big opportunity that I continue to see is quality is viewed as a QC, quality control. So I take it as a mission to convert that thought process and impression to quality assurance. Quality assurance is much more broader and in-depth than this notion that everything is inspected. I'm sure Cisco sees it often enough. Quality is inspected into the product. We cannot inspect quality into the product. We have to design the quality into the product. That means we need to take pride in building engineers in quality function. And regulatory professionals have to be in the regulatory professional experts. And that comes from actually working on the shop floor, actually working in R&D. You know how it's made, you know how it's designed, and then those folks becoming quality professional is much, much stronger as a team compared to a history major doing a quality assurance function, which is not going to be a recipe for success. So I think the qualification of people working in quality function is really key for building culture of quality. And I'm so glad to hear Jackie said that, and I welcome that in my team as well. We promote talent out, we invite talent in our teams. And so welcoming all of those mix and hybrid of talent building is actually helping us to build a brand of quality assurance rather than this notion of quality getting inspected into the product, which I do not subscribe at all.
Great. Thank you, Lakram. So it's interesting that each one of you talked about a disaster, or maybe there's a better word for it, but an event or two or three that said, oh my goodness, we need to focus on or address quality in a different way. And I would say, having been around the industry for a few decades now, what I've seen is a sea change in the way the relationship between companies and the agency, I don't know if it's routine, but I've seen it succeed. This concept of collaboration rather than confrontation. And I'm going to ask each of you to comment, but Cisco, I wonder if you could provide your insights into the change in attitude and approach at the FDA, and if my perception is at all accurate.
So I actually, I think internally at FDA starting to hit, not to overuse the term, but that tipping point, right? We've seen enough the interactions with participants who are more than willing to be transparent with their activities and their processes that not only are staff being more, willing to share on their end and engage, but also more confident in the activities that we're trying to lead here and that the organizations are doing. I think, even in response to recalls, because recalls happen, we've seen more proactive engagement, more sharing of all the details behind the scenes, even stuff that isn't completely fully baked or shut out yet. And we're seeing the review teams actually be more engaged in problem solving with the organization to help contain the issues or address things. Participation at companies. When have you ever seen companies invite a cadre of FDA people over to kind of walk through and show them everything that's going on and be completely transparent and open? That's happened. It's really starting to change that mindset again. And I appreciate the idea that Lakram mentioned about quality kind of operating this QC thing, because it also is an aspect of just the way the system has developed, and we've also engaged on things. I think the more we start being, brought into that loop, that engagement, our review staff are asking for different ways to proactively engage with organizations. The better we will get to that idea that I think even as an agency, what we want to get to is that principle of quality assurance, right? We don't want to be reviewing and inspecting everything after the fact. It's not adding a lot of, of what benefit we can actually collectively gain if we were engaged earlier, if we were part of the process earlier, if we were enabling the organization to set up its systems to succeed earlier. So I think it's there. We're climbing uphill. We're seeing more of it. The other day we had a branch come in and ask us specifically to see if we could talk with an organization and we could help drive a different conversation with them. So it's getting there. It's working. It's just bits and pieces of it. And like I said, it's a journey. And the more of these successes we get internally, even the easier it gets to change the broader culture collectively.
Great. Thank you, Cisco.
Jump in
Jackie,
here real
please.
quick. So I think, Cisco, you and your team and certainly the CDRH organization has been incredibly on the forefront of leading helping corporations partner with you. And from my perspective as a head of quality, it's such a relief because historically we're always guessing, what does the agency want? What does the agency want? And 50-50, we might get it right. 50-50, we're going to get it wrong. And why not just have the dialogue and then we're all happy and none of us are wasting our time. And so I'm very appreciative of the opportunities we've had to do that and to partner, and we continue to. And as you said, some of it, I would say on the early end started in the inspection side of things, but now it's bleeding into the submission side of things. And obviously we all want that. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we want to do it right the first time and not have to iterate and iterate and iterate? And I think we're all strapped for resources, right? So the more times we have to go back and forth and the more times we misunderstood each other, it's just not good for anybody. So I really applaud and am grateful for the programs that all of you are participating in. Joe, Pat, Cisco, and everybody who has been leading these efforts to make these interactions more direct and honest and really geared toward what we all want, which is, the patient to have good therapies at the end of the day.
Joe, your thoughts and observations on the sea change from confrontation to collaboration?
Yeah, I echo Jackie's comments. I think that certainly the work that Case for Quality has helped create that shift. It's helped validate some of the things that we've seen. But I think it also has given folks within the industry the opportunity to go back into the organization and say it's okay to have conversations and embrace that conversation with the agency because they're open to it. I think that was something that we all had to learn over the years, that the FDA was there as a partner. It may not have always seemed like that, but I think we sort of defaulted to the fact that, well, they're not going to want to talk to us, so we're not going to talk to them. But I've said it a couple of times in other meetings that what you're starting to see is, years ago, from an industry perspective, we would all sit around a table and wonder, why isn't the FDA embracing this? We're doing this, we want to do this, but the FDA will never buy it. They'll never buy into it. The reverse now is happening, where the agency's coming to us and say, we want industry to come in and engage with us in this activity because we're endorsing it. And I think that has a significant impact on all of the things that you've heard with regard to whether it's a quality system or manufacturing related relationship, or that registration activity, and having those the pre-cert conversations and all of that, but creating that ability to have those engagements is something that is definitely a sea change. And I think the industry needs to be less skeptical about it and embrace it more. But I think also too, the challenge at the agency is how do they infiltrate that mindset across other areas within the divisions, right? So it's working. It's just, again, it's a transformation and it's a journey.
Great. Lokram, your thoughts?
In the interest of not repeating everything Jackie and Joe said, which I concur completely, I think we are moving from this fear to more partnership because, at the end of the day, we find the value in the partnership. CMMI is a fantastic event that's happening. We are signing up more of our divisions and sites to do the maturity model. This gives openness and transparency for folks in FDA and industry consortium to come and see us. And we have total trust and we are confident about what we do, because every single day the decisions we are making is around the culture of quality. So what do we have to hide? At the end of the day, this fear comes from us not being confident, right? That's what happened 12 years ago, not being confident, not sure enough what we do is right. And then the fear comes. The FDA auditor showed up in the front office and everybody is so scared, like who's going to go and visit them and invite them and talk to them. I've been in so many of those audits myself in the front office. They're real people. They are public employees. They're here to protect us. We are also recipient of that engagement as a consumer, as a patient in the hospital. So why wouldn't we be transparent? If I have nothing to hide, what is there to fear, right? That confidence has built over time because we are confident. So in the interactions also, it shows up in how we interact with the FDA nowadays. And CMMI is a great example. We did invite, what Cisco, you mentioned, a whole bunch of folks from FDA to visit Kalamazoo and, show how we make beds and instruments and so forth. So we are happy. We are proud, let me put it this way. And after the fact, when an FDA auditor leaves, we're actually so proud to showcase whether we have a 483. No one in our leadership team is saying, oh, you got 483, something is wrong. Actually, that's a great opportunity for us to improve even further. Why didn't we catch it ourselves is more of a question than actually, why did this occur? So that's the culture that we have. And this is by no means a chance and happenstance. This is hard work. And all I would say is the more confident we become is because we do the right thing every single day. Right. So that's what I would say. And thank you, and Cisco, for your leadership and the FDA leadership to change the conversation from compliance to the purpose that we are all here is to protect the consumers, which one of us is going to be one of them, one of these days. Anyway.
Great. Thank you. One of the tricks, or not tricks, but one of the potential techniques for instilling a culture of quality is to help the workforce understand where their products end up. And a lot of companies, I see this a lot on the pharma side, actually bring patients or physicians in to talk about their experience with the product. And I was wondering if you've all tried that, whether that's something that is an effective approach to building that sense of patient focus and culture of quality.
I can go. We do this routinely in Stryker. I'm glad you asked the question, Pat. I should have mentioned in the previous conversation. We do this across each of the divisions, and we bring the patient story to the floor, actually, so people can hear it in the assembly floor, what they make and the impact they could have in somebody getting a better life. And we also put that across in sales meetings. We put that in service meetings. So everybody in the sales and service and in-house hears those patient stories. And actually, we do have an opportunity whenever it presents itself to have the patient itself describe where they were and how they got better, including the surgeon. So the surgeon also explains the technique they used, the product they used, and how purposeful that work that we do in enabling that patient, that doctor to be successful. So it's most of the time, if not all, you can see around the entire hallway, people are crying, literally in tears, right? Because of the moving story each one of them can tell. That's a powerful entity. It transcends anything that we can do in instilling that purpose to every single person who comes into work to do what is right every single day.
And I would say the same. We have a library of patient testimonials that we share across all the plants. We share them on the floor. We share them at town halls. And then we also have employees who tell their personal stories. Their mother was in the hospital and here's what happened. Or today, actually, just a few hours ago, we had one. I was over in the plant here in Round Lake, and we showed a video of one of our delivery drivers who delivers dialysis fluids to patients in their homes. And he talked about how important his job is and how it makes him feel so good about what he does every single day. So we try to come from every angle we can to get that message across the company and everywhere we can spread it.
Joe?
Yeah, I think they've, again, at the risk of being repetitive, patient stories, making that connection is critical. From an MDIC perspective, they are part of our ecosystem, and we're looking at ways to engage with patients more frequently in more of advisory roles. and how can we engage with patients from that perspective. But one of the stories that I've got two stories. That one of them is we went to a supplier and we shared with the frontline employees some patient stories, but they had no idea. They're building generators and boxes and they're putting PCB boards together, but they never made the quote unquote connection between the box they were building, the device, and then where that was used. And that was an incredible experience. And then talking about someone in the company, that person was in a terrible automobile accident and they were on a ventilator for a really long time. They recovered, but one of the stories we told was all of the people within the organization that touched that ventilator and all of the faces that popped up. It was incredible. I mean, in terms of, from the person that helped design it to bringing it in and servicing it or installing it. So those are very powerful messages. And I think, that most companies do that, whether it's through a quality day or specific events where you bring in patients or town halls. It's an incredible tool. It's an incredible, it's impactful. It's powerful. It's that you touch the product, you touch the patient mindset.
And I cannot, I think, just stress enough how that even impacts us at the agency. Right. I know we've got a lot of patient engagement initiatives ongoing right now, but, one of the times that we had an opportunity to take a collection of our branches who are, part of the, whose companies are in the case for quality, who are doing a lot of these accelerated reviews, when the company invited them in to kind of see what's happening behind the scenes, just open door here, go look and see what's going on. They also had arranged for a patient to come and doctor there to meet with the team. And it's one thing for us to collectively as an agency to talk to patients and everything else, but this was relevant immediately to what the team had done, review that they had recently completed. They saw the impact there. I cannot stress enough the shift that caused in the mindset of the team immediately with the program, how the program's perceived, things we were doing, the fact that it isn't just about industry anymore. It truly now, some of that members of that team and that internal branch are some of the bigger advocates that we've got from a case for quality standpoint. So it has impact, right? It's just finding that right connection.
Great. Thank you, Cisco. So Cisco, I'll start with you. We're going to wrap up, but I love to get each of you to think of one word that is the critical to success element in achieving a culture of quality and the benefits that culture can provide.
Oh, I'm going to go with, something like constancy. Right? We've got to be diligent about being consistent with this and following through, right, on where that end goal is.
Great. Thank you. Joe?
Oh, gee. Alignment. I'm going to say alignment. Alignment to that mission, and that, it's where, as I mentioned, it's alignment on that we're putting patients first, and that should help drive everything else.
Great. Jackie?
I'm going to go with trust. We trust in each other, trust in the regulators, trust in the process that we're going through to make things better. Trust in our mission and our mission, not just our company mission, but our mission as a collective group, which is to make our products, all of our products, better for patients. So trust.
Great. Thank you. Lokra?
I would say leadership, leading by example. It's behaviors we instill. That's what people look up to. So leadership.
Great. Well, I want to thank everyone on our panel for your time today. I think hopefully it's going to be very helpful to the audience in helping their companies build a culture of quality. If we go to the slide, there is some contact information. If anyone watching this would like to get further information, they can reach out to Joe or myself at those email addresses. And the playbook is available on the mdic.org website at the link pictured on the slide as well. So again, I want to thank all of you for your time today and appreciate your dedication to the case for quality and building a culture of quality.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you being here.